It's nice to see you all. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Mulenga Anthony, and it's a pleasure to be with you today. It's good to see the old version of me. That was the old version, so this is the new version. First and foremost, I want to thank all of you for coming, for having spared this time out of your precious time to come and hear this story. Many of you have brought your loved ones, your friends and family. It's such an honor, and I'm so humbled to be here. Tonight I'm going to share with you the story of my life. This is the story that started a long time ago, as far as my mind can remember. I was orphaned at a very young age. When I was only 7 years old, I lost my parents to AIDS. Both my parents died of HIV/AIDS. But before that, I lived in a very happy home, just like any other normal child. My mother was a very nice and faithful woman. She was a very good person who married my father, who happened to be an average man, just like most men. My father was very unfaithful to my mom, and so he had other lovers, other women that he truly, truly loved. So my mom just happened to be a substitute. I'm the last born in the family of two. I have an older brother, his name is Michael. We call him Mike. So one time, my mother would hear about my father's treacherous movements. She would hear about my father's unfaithfulness, but she hoped one day he would change. But the circumstance and the situation happened to change her. I wasn't supposed to be the last born. So in 1995, the baby girl was born. They named her Pansia. They were not aware of her immune system. But this baby had all the health complications you can think about. In the medical terms now, you'd refer to such health complications as maybe opportunistic infections that are related with the HIV virus. And so my mother would wonder, why is this baby always getting sick? We've been to doctors and doctors. And so they went to the hospital one time, and the doctors asked her if she could bring her husband. She went and brought my father to the hospital, and they were cancelled, and they were told that they had HIV/AIDS. Like I told you, my mother was a very faithful woman, and she knew that this had everything to do with my dad. And so in 1996, they divorced. My mother had no education whatsoever. She was just a high school dropout. My father was a very rich man. He was very wealthy. I remember as a kid, we lived in a very nice neighborhood. It's called Broma Township. It's a very nice neighborhood. We had vehicles. I remember as a kid, would have 3 meals a day. I grew up in a normal, nice home, just like any other normal child. I had no idea that one day I would be able to see the other side of the coin. My dad came from a wealthy family, and we had everything that we needed as kids as we were growing up. But my mother was all heartbroken when she heard of the sad news. Because the months that came after, my younger sister died. My mother decided to break up with my dad. They divorced, and we shifted. The courts actually wanted me and Mike to stay with my dad, because they knew that if we stayed with my dad, we'll have a better future, because he was the one in position to provide an education and good shelter for me and Mike. But we knew that he never valued the son. As young as we were, we knew how abusive and ruthless our father was. We decided to remain and stay with my mom. My father shifted from Lusaka town, which is the capital city of Zambia, and went to the copper belt. He married another woman, and that was the last I ever saw of my father alive. We remained with my mom. Life with my mom was very, very hard. Imagine we shifted. The trend was just too massive. We shifted from that highest point where we would have 3 meals a day. We lived in a very nice house. You know, we'd have cars parked outside, to a compound. That's a compound that was shown in the video. We shifted from that high life to a compound, and my mother with no education whatsoever. Life was really hard for me and my brother. My brother was old enough by then, so he chose a career for himself. He would go outside, would always find himself in trouble, but I stayed close to my mom. So as young as I was, maybe 5, 6 years old, I would still nurture my mom in her sickness, because now the disease reached its chronic stage. The disease had reached its chronic stage, and my mom was always sick. She was always sick, and so I would be there by the bedside and nursing my mom. And in 1997, 24th October, my mom passed. When my mom passed, none of the extended relatives were willing to look after me and my brother Mike. And so we resorted to living on the streets, as that was the only option that was presented to us at that time. So me and Mike went to live on the streets. I was only 7 years old then. Like I told you in the introduction, the story I would love to share with you today is a story of hope. A story that should make you see and look at life as something that is not a fight. I want you to look at life as something that is already planned, because you are not here on earth by mistake. And that's the story that I'm here to share with you. The story that will remind you, the story that will make you realize that your life is not a mistake. You were known before the foundation of the earth. And so we went to live on the street with Mike. I was only 7 years old. Life was much more tougher than it was when my mom was alive then, because now we didn't have any roof, we didn't have anything to cover ourselves in. We relied on the dustbins, the trash bins for food, and we relied on the carton boxes that would cover us when we go to sleep. And many are the times that older street men, because I was only 7 years old then, many are the times that older street men would come and they would abuse you physically, sexually, or even emotionally. It was so rough. And I was only 7 years old then. And that was the life I knew as a 7-year-old child. So as a 7-year-old child, I didn't have toys. I didn't have toy books or anything. As a 7-year-old child, I started learning the arts of surviving at the age of 7. So on the streets, when people, most of you have eaten at a restaurant before. So when you go to a restaurant and you buy, let's say, pie, or you buy a sandwich, and then you realize that you don't like the cheese that's on the sandwich, so you only have a bite and throw away the other piece. Most of you would agree with me. So that piece that you throw, me and my brother would go, because I was very short, I was very short as a child, but my brother was taller than me, my older brother. So he would go while I wait by the side, maybe looking out for the security men at that restaurant so that they don't come and beat us up. My brother would go in the dustbins and grab all the leftover foods that people have eaten, and would put those foods, would put the food in a plastic bag, and then would go. So that would become our hot meal for the day. I lived like that for 3 years, relying on people's leftovers for survival. And in the night when it gets very cold, we would sleep in drainages like I was showing you. That was my bedroom 15, 16 years ago. I would sleep in the drainages. We would get the carton boxes and lay them, and that's where I would sleep. I had no idea that I would ever stand in front of you amazing and wonderful people today and be able to share my story with you. Like I told you, it's a story of hope. A story when you look at your life, you realize that you're not here on earth by mistake. There's a reason why you're alive today, and there's a reason why someone died 3 milliseconds ago, or there's a reason why someone has been written in hospital, and there's a reason why you're healthy and seated nicely in the chapel today. So that was the kind of life that we lived, relying on leftover food. That was the kind of life that we lived, sleeping on the corridors and getting the carton boxes and covering us. And many amazing situations would happen. Because I was a child, I never kept track of the weather conditions. So I wouldn't know that we're in rain season. And sometimes you'd be sleeping in the drainages and then it rains. And you're sleeping and you just see water all over and you have to come out and try to look for shelter. And the probability of finding a shelter was close to 0. It was none. You wouldn't find a shelter in the night. So just get soaked and hoping to dry up the following day. I continued, that was my lifestyle for 3 years. Until one time, I met a friend of mine. His name is Jimmy. And we met on the streets and became good friends. He was about 3-4 years older than me. My brother because my brother was the one who was looking after me when I was living on the streets. So many other times my brother would come over and tell me, Anthony, if you start following me around, you would put me and yourself in trouble because you are weak and you are vulnerable. So people would want to harm you first to harm me. If they want to make me annoyed, they'll beat you up or they'll do something bad to you. So we kept our relationship secret even as we lived on the streets. There are very few people that knew that he was my brother because he didn't want anything to happen to me. He would always tell me to stay in one place. He would always tell me, you stand by the street lights. So I'll stand by the street lights, and when the street lights turn red, vehicles stop when the street lights turn red, and we'll go to different vehicles and ask and beg for money, like you saw in the lion video that we did. And so my brother would tell me, I want you to stand here and wait for me, and he would go out in town looking for food. And when he finds food, he would come over and give me that food, and you'll find me at the same spot. So one time I would be by the street lights I was by the street lights begging, and a friend of mine came. He was a bit older than me. He introduced himself as Jimmy, and I told him I'm Anton, and so we became friends. When my brother came and saw Jimmy became part of the family now on the streets. So Jimmy became one of us. And many other times that my brother would leave me and Jimmy by the street lights, and he would go out on the streets to look for food while I wait by the street lights. And Jimmy started telling me about Fountain of Hope. It's just the street kid junction. It's a street kid junction where all the street kids will just go in. It's a drop-in center where street kids will just go in and have a meal. It wasn't much of a meal, but it made so much difference. So we'd go by the street kid junction, and then they would serve us a meal, and then we'd eat and go back on the streets. It was just a drop-in center. There was no proper physical facility that was there. And so he told me about that idea, and I didn't pay attention to it. And so we continued as a family, the 3 of us. My brother would go out, look for food, come back and give us the food. He would go look for food in the dustbins, and he would carry the leftover food and bring, so we would have. So we always knew that my brother would come back. There was never a time that my brother went and never came back. He would always come back. And so we always knew that we were going to have a meal. And that was our lifestyle. And one day, we were by the street light, and I saw kids passing, children passing. They were looking very nice in uniforms, and they had school bags with them. And they were crossing the zebra line, they were crossing the road. I'm sure they were going to school, coming from school. So I saw those kids passing, and they were holding hands, and they were looking very nice. I looked at them, and I told Jimmy. So as I was looking at the street, the children passing, Jimmy was busy, going from one car to another begging. So he looked at me. I wasn't doing the job. I wasn't begging. So he looked at me, and he knew I was puzzled looking at the children crossing the road with looking nice in school uniforms and bags. They were crossing the road. So he came over to me and said, those kids are going to school. Let's go back to work. I said, Jimmy, I need you to tell me about that street junction that you told me about. I said, what has changed? I said, I need you to tell me about that street junction that you told me about, where there are volunteers that come and teach you. I need you to tell me about that. And so he saw suddenly, I just wanted to go to a place where I can be safe. He saw suddenly that I just wanted to go to a place where I can be safe. It wasn't a safe place either. It was actually much more worse than the street. But it was a place where people can come in, just a street kid junction, where people can come in, volunteers from the community can come and teach the street kids and spend more time with them. We brushed that thought that day. But after that day and being exposed to, after seeing the children crossing, I was not the same. My brother came that night. I didn't tell him of my experience. He brought the food, and my brother doesn't talk much. He would always bring the food. Most times we would not even eat. He would always bring the food and he would give us and just go somewhere, maybe just watch cars or just sit somewhere and would eat, and then he would tell us to go to sleep. And the following day, that was a trend. He's the kind of person who doesn't talk much, so I didn't tell him of what happened. Days that came, I was by the street kids junction, and every time we would see an American, we would always knew that he or she will either give us money or buy us food or give you clothes or give you anything. And I was by the street kids junction, by the street kids drop-in center. And I saw this woman that was just coming and moving around and just getting photos. And there were so many of the street kids, but I was, one of the youngest. There were so many street kids older than me, who every time they would see an American, it would be a stampede. They would run towards her and just call all sorts of names and ask her for help. Like you saw in the video, those street kids, it's the same scenario that we were trying to portray. Those street kids would just run towards an American, and because they knew that most Americans are very kind. And so they would run towards an American and ask for food, and the food will always be served, the food will always be given. And so I was by a street kids junction, and I saw this woman, who was moving around and getting photos. And that's the woman that spoke earlier today. I saw this woman, and all the other street kids, it was a stampede. They were running towards her and trying to shake her hands and trying to ask her for help. And I was in the background, just observing what was happening in the background. And as she was coming closer to where I was, after shaking hands and talking and helping out these other street kids, she came over to the place where I was. And she knew, like she said, she knew I didn't belong there. She knew that all I needed was an opportunity. There's one thing that she didn't share when she was here. As much as many of the times that we've shared our encounter with each other, she's told me that because she was living at the hotel that time, I told her that, "Madam, please don't forget me," as she was going back. I looked up to her, and as she talked to me, and I didn't know English. I had never set foot in a classroom before. I didn't even know how to spell my name by then. I was 11 years old. I didn't even know how to spell my name. I didn't even know, I had never held a book by then. I didn't know anything. I was not exposed in a classroom before then. And so I was talking to this woman, and after our conversation I said, "Madam, please don't forget me." And she went back to the hotel. As we talk now, she tells me those words touched her so much that she couldn't brush them off. Those words were always repeating themselves to her as she was in the hotel. But days later, she came over to the Street Junction Center and found me. And as she found me at the Street Kids Junction Center, she knew I needed a place to stay. Mothers Without Borders, the organization that she's the founder and that is in operation now, did not have any physical facility by then. They did not have any building whatsoever. And so she looked around for a safer orphanage center she looked around for a safer orphanage where they look after vulnerable children and street kids. And so she came to Lazarus Project, and that was a place where they would look after street kids and vulnerable children. And my brothers and sisters, that's the first time I started learning. That's the first time I got exposed to the classroom. I was only 11 years old. Like I told you in the introduction, that nothing that happens in our lives is by mistake. Nothing that happens in our lives is by mistake. Everything that happens in our lives is for a reason. It may not be in line with our reasoning, but it's for a reason. I went into a classroom at the age 11, and the teachers would give us work on a Monday. I was introduced into a classroom on a Monday, and the teachers would come and give us work. They would give us homeworks and would present the work to the teacher, and they would mark. And the teacher would look at my work, and she would be surprised and say, "Are you in first grade?" I said, "Yes, I'm in first grade. I just come." And they said, No, wait a minute. Let's go to the school principal." And she would go to the school principal and say, "Look at how this boy is writing. Look at the work that this boy has presented. I recommend this boy to go to second grade." So on a Tuesday, I'll be in second grade. Again, on a Tuesday, I'll be in second grade. And again, the teachers would give us work, and I would write the work and present it. And the teacher would look at the work, say, "No, this kid is the one that was brought in from first grade yesterday, but I don't think he's fit to be in second grade." They would go back to the school principal, and the school principal would say, "This kid again, yes, look at the work that this kid has presented. We recommend this kid to go into third grade." So on a Wednesday, I will be in third grade. So my brothers and sisters, within a week, I was in 5th grade. But before that, I had never set foot in a classroom. Before that, I didn't know how to read. I didn't know how to write. I didn't even know how to speak the English that I'm speaking now. You've seen that my English has improved. You can tell from the video. That English was something else. Seriously, that English was something else. I try to comprehend now and say, what was I thinking? But it's good. That was the English then. So within a week, I was already in 5th grade. There are 3 exams that we write in Zambia. There's the grade 7 exams and the grade 9 exams and the grade 12 exams that allows you to graduate from high school. I had no educational background whatsoever. When my parents died, when my parents divorced, when my parents died, I was very young. I had not even started kindergarten. My brother Mike was in school by then, but I was not exposed to education whatsoever. But there I was. So that's the first thing I need you to take out. To understand that God will always compensate you. He always compensate your sorrow with something else. God gave me a brain. He knew, even though I didn't have parents, even though I didn't have relatives and my own relatives deserted me, He gave me a brain. He gave me the brain that would memorize and understand things spontaneously at the very first I read, and that's the brain that God gave me. I wrote my grade 7 exams, which is the first exam, and I was the best at my school. The best, the highest at my school. I got 808 out of 900 points. I was the best at the school. I went into junior high. I wrote my grade 9 exams, and I was the best in my province. So a province would be equivalent to a state. So if you say Sandy, Utah State, the whole province, I was the best in the entire Utah when I wrote my grade 9 exams. I went into high school, and I wrote my last exams, my grade 12 exams, and I was the best in the country in mathematics and science. This allowed me an opportunity to even shake hands with the late president, the president of Zambia. because I was the best in mathematics and science. Imagine the background where I'm coming from. I had no idea. I didn't even know how to spell my name. I didn't understand the alphabetical order, not even the vowels. And there I was, having dinner with the president because I've scored the highest marks in science and mathematics. There I was, moving around in parliament, shaking hands with the MPs because I scored the highest marks. After I finished grade 12, the facility at Mothers Without Borders has an age limit. It would only allow up to the age of 18, not below that, not above that. And I'd already become 18. And so I moved out of the facility. But none of my relatives, like I told you, were willing to look after me. Even when I was a kid, the founder of Mothers Without Borders tried to make peace between me and my relatives. The founder of Mothers Without Borders, Kathy Headley, she tried to take me back. None of them were willing to look after me. So at the age of 19, I went to live back on the streets. Even though I had this normal educational background, even though I was the best in the country, even though I did all this, I went to live back on the streets. But this time, it was a different scenario. This time I went to live back on the streets, but I carried my certificate with me. I carried my passport. I had already gotten a passport by then. I carried my certificate with me, and I would find a place and hide my folder and cover it properly. I would go into the rich neighborhoods. And knock. And when they come out, and I'll ask them if they have any children, and when they tell me they have, and I'll ask them, do your children have any problems in mathematics and science? And they would say, let me ask them. They wouldn't even know if their children have problems. And so they'll call their children, and their children would say yes. And I'll tell them, may I help tutoring them? And in return, you can either give me food or money. That's how I survived. I would go knock in the rich neighborhoods, and people would come out. And when people come out, I would ask them if I can help tutor their children. And they would allow me to tutor their children. And when I tutor their children, in return, they'll either give me food or money. And most of these neighborhoods will be Indian neighborhoods. And so if they give you food, the rice will be very spicy. The rice will be very spicy. But that's how I managed. Until again, through Mothers Without Borders, the organization that's in operation now, the two sisters, they're not here today, Mother PJ and Mother Sandy. They're very good friends with Mother Kathy. They came over and they heard that I'm not there anymore, and they wanted to see me because they had not seen me before then. And they told Uncle Innocent, who happens to be the country director, to go and look out for me. And he found me. And he found me on the streets, and he took me there. I met them. I carried my certificates with me. I reached to them and I opened my certificates and I showed them all the highest marks I've scored in high school and all the certificates from grade 7 up to high school. I'd kept them nicely in a folder. And they looked at my certificates. They looked at my grades. And they said, no, what's your plan? And I told them I have to go back to school. I want to go back to university and study anything. I was willing to do anything as long as I can raise money and do whatever my heart desires. So they promised me, and they looked up to me and said, Anthony, we're going to go back to Utah, and we're going to talk to our friends, we're going to talk to our family, and we're going to see if we can raise money for you to go to school, which they did. They came back here, they talked to their friends, they talked to their family, and they raised money for me to go to the University of Zambia. I went to the University of Zambia, and through the help of Mothers Without Borders, through the help of Uncle Bob and Auntie Christy and Uncle Scott and so many wonderful people that have played their role, I was able to go to the University of Zambia to do my undergraduate. I went to the University of Zambia, my brothers and sisters. Tuition fees was about 2,500. That's per semester. And these are the people that completely relied from other people to pay for my tuition fees. So they would come back here and talk to families and ask them to see if they can contribute money to send me to school. And so they would come back to Utah and they raised that $2,500 and they sent it over and I paid for my tuition fees. And I was at the university and I started learning and attending the lectures. I didn't have a room of my own. I would always sleep in somebody's room. We call it squatting. I would always sleep in somebody's room, and because it was very expensive for me to have my own room, so I paid someone who already had the room and see if he could allow me to sleep on the floor. I would pay someone and then I would sleep on the floor. I didn't have my own room. I didn't have any single textbook. I finished my undergraduate program without a textbook. And many times, I would tutor foreign students at the university. There were foreign students from Germany, foreign students from Russia, foreign students from so many different parts of the world, and they would come on cultural exchange program at the University of Zambia. And they had problems with calculus, they had problems with biochemistry. And when you are given a quiz and they don't do well and they see that I've done well, I was always an average student. They would see that I've done well and they would come over and I would go to them and I say, see, calculus is easy. Let me help you with calculus. And in return, allow me to use your textbook. That's how I finished my undergraduate degree. I would go to these rich, expensive, extravagant kids from different parts of the world, and I would ask them if I can tutor in calculus. I can help them understand calculus and biochemistry. And when they sleep, in the night they can give me their textbooks. So I would tutor so many students during the day. And when I'm about to sleep, when they're about to sleep, they will give me their textbooks. And they will make me promise them that I have to return those textbooks the following morning. So the entire night I'll have this much of textbooks, making my own notes, because I knew that in the morning these people will come and get their books. A book was very expensive. It was about $60 per book. And I didn't want to bother Auntie Christy or Uncle Bob or Mother Kathy or Mother BJ or Mother Sandy or many wonderful people that they've played the role, and Joanna and the others. I didn't want to bother any of them because all I wanted was to stay in school. All I wanted was to get an education, which I got. It was never an easy journey. I never told anyone about it. I kept it to myself. I knew that as long as I'm in school, I can do without books. I knew that as long as I maintain my place at the university, the rest I can do without. And that's a principle that I've grown up with, to be able to differentiate what is it that I need and what is it that I want. I needed someone to pay for my school fees. And so I didn't tell any of these people what was happening. So during the day, my job would be to help these foreign students understand calculus. My job was to help these foreign students understand biochemistry or anatomy. And when they sleep, they'll all give me all their textbooks, and I'll have this pile of textbooks, and I have to make notes. Because early in the morning, they will come and say, oh, please give us the textbooks. So I have to go to the library, and I'll all give them back their textbooks respectively. I finished my undergraduate, and I was the best student at the University of Zambia. I graduated with a distinction. I have a bachelor's degree in science. I graduated with a distinction. Something that's rare. Something that has only happened 3 times, me being the 3rd person in the history of the university since its inception in 1961. Something that has never happened. I graduated with a distinction from the university. I never had textbooks. I graduated with a distinction, so much so that the school, the principal, the management of the university called me and said, they gave me a full scholarship. They called me and gave me a full scholarship to go to medical school. And that's how I went into medical school. I've been in medical school for almost 4 years now. The school, the university, through the government of Zambia, gave me a full scholarship. They paid for my school fees, for my tuition fees, they paid for my books, and here I am. I'm done with medical school. And this September, I start my internship. It's a normal story like any other story. But the difference is, I never gave up. There's so many things that have happened in my life. So many injustices, so many justices, so many things that have happened in my life, but I never gave up. This is the message that I bring to Utah as I go back next week. This is the message that I want to share with you, my brothers and sisters. Is no matter what life throws at you, never give up. No matter what life throws at you, always know that God has a plan for you. He says it in his words that I have plans for you. Plans not to harm you, but plans to give you hope and a future. He's a just God. He has plans for each one of us in this place. Look at me. At the age of 7, I started living on the streets with no parental care whatsoever. My brother was the only one, and he was young. There's only a 3-4 years difference between me and him. He would look after me and care for me even as I was on the streets. But I had no parental guidance whatsoever. Look at me, I went through the university without a textbook. It's not because I wanted to, but it's because the university library is just a place where you can carry your own textbook and read from there, and then afterwards go with your textbook. The university does not have the textbooks that you have to use to study. That's the life, and that's how I finished university. It was really hard for me. I finished university like that. Look at me, I never held a pen or a pencil until I was 11 years old. And here I am. I'm done with my undergraduate. Here I am. I'm done with medical school. And I'm standing right today and telling you what my life has been. So my advice to you is, my earnest appeal to you is to never give up. Life will throw all sorts of things to you, but you should never give up. Never give up on your marriages, never give up on your relationships, never give up on your friendship, never give up on being good. Because God will always compensate you when you least expect it. You may be going through certain things in life today. You may be going through certain things and you wish you could be given an audience with God for just 3 minutes and ask him, why am I going through these things? I'm asking you not to give up. Not to give up on yourself. Because I never gave up. Even when I went to high school, I was always studying. I was always studying harder than anyone else. Because I knew that I was going to make it. I had hope in myself. You need to have hope in yourself. Even when no one seems to have hope in you, you need to have that hope. You need to have that faith. To know that a better tomorrow is yet to come. Even when things are rough in your life, you need to know that a better tomorrow is yet to come. If you look at that video that we did 13, 14 years ago, and you look at me today, I'm different. It's not written on my forehead that I lived on the street for 3 years. Now I move in the hospital with my stethoscope and a lab coat And I go to people and I look at their drug treatment plan and I look at their reviews and I do diagnosis on people. But that was the lifestyle that I lived 13, 14 years ago. That was where I lived. I ate from the trash bins. I slept in janitors. I had nothing to cover myself with. But if you look at me now, I'll be in a stethoscope, I'll be in a lab coat, and I'll do ward rounds in the hospital. Because I never gave up. I had hope in myself. I knew that one day things would turn back to normal. And God, as I'm telling you, He's compensated me for all the pain that I went through in life. God has compensated me and He's yet to compensate, because we're in the compensation period now. He's yet to compensate me for all the sorrows and all the painful moments that I was exposed to when I was defenseless and vulnerable. And that's what God will do to you. He's going to compensate you for your life. He's going to compensate you for so many things that are happening in your life that you're not aware of. So please never give up. As you look at me today, I look at my life and I say, I think I've run a good race. I think I've fought a good fight. Because where I am now, I'm able to see the finish line. I'm able to see the light out of this tunnel. And God will always place people in your life. He will always put people in place in your life to help you achieve that goal. I wonder now when I sit down and I wonder what would have happened if I never met Malakath. If she never picked me from all the other street kids that were there. I know it was, like I told you, it would be a stampede. It was always a stampede. It was always a large crowd of street kids. A crowd of street kids surrounding her. But she picked me from the street kids. I sit now and I wonder what would have happened to me if God never placed so many wonderful people in my life. What would have happened to me? So God will always place people in your life for a reason. The people that are in your life now, they are there for a reason. Those that they've left, have left for a reason. So never give up on yourself. Always work hard, persevere, be determined. Have faith in everything that you do. Make sure that you do it best. Because when you look at my life now, see where I'm coming from. See the lifestyle that I was exposed to as a kid. See where I'm coming from and look at where I am now. Things are so much different. Very different. Two parallel spectrums. And I look up to the heavens and I thank God for all the people that He's placed in my life. And I thank God that He gave me the faith indirectly, even when I didn't know what faith was. I was hopeful that someday things will change. As you look at me now, things have changed. I have written something because, like I told you, I'm an average student. I don't have a special brain, so my brain can't keep a lot of things. So, in closing, I've written something that I'd love to read out to you. Like, I wish I could put all this to memory. My memory is not as good. I tell you, there are some times in life when you fall down, even as you persevere. There are some times in life when you fall down, even as you aim at being good, even as you aim at being that best wife, the best husband you could ever be. There are some times in life when you fall down and you feel that you don't have the strength to get back up. Do you think that you have hope? Do you think that you have that faith that you require? Because I tell you, I went through my undergraduate degree, like I told you, without any single textbook. I tell you, I lost my parents when I was only 7 years old. I was orphaned and I started living on the street for 3 years. I had no parents. I had no relatives, I had no one to look after me. It was supposed to be impossible for me to get back up. It is supposed to be impossible in the human mind. The way a human being comprehends issues, it is supposed to be impossible for me to wear a white lab coat and a stethoscope around my neck and make word rounds, looking at my background. But I never gave up. One of my favorite songs is by Hilary Wicks. I can't remember the title of the song, but she said in a song that there are times in life when the only way you can still be standing is to get down on your knees. I never gave up. I had no testimony of the Savior like I do today, but I was always hopeful. I always knew that something will happen in my life. I always knew. But I just want you to know that it's not the end. It's not the end. It matters how you are going to finish. It doesn't matter how you start in life. It matters how you are going to finish. It doesn't matter how you started in life. You may have started like me as a street kid, as an orphan who's lived on the street for 3 years. You may have started like me. You may have started in life as a failure. You've tried so many things and none of these things seems to work out. It matters how you're going to finish. Are you going to finish strong? Are you going to fight the good fight? Or are you going to run a good race? In closing, my brothers and sisters, I've had this opportunity which Mother Kathy has presented to me, and Kristen and Uncle Bob and Mother BJ, Mother Sandra, so many wonderful things. Terry, I'm seeing so many things, so many people in the audience, and I'm so grateful that all of you could come. I've had this opportunity to speak to so many people within a very short period of time. And when people just listen to me for a little while, for a bit, they start to forget that they're talking to a former street kid. When people see me, even in the hospitals, or maybe nurses come to me and they say, "Doctor, what's this drug?" And I explain the drug and I go over to the patient and I try to explain the mechanism of action of that drug to a patient and what they should do and when they should take it. And after talking to them and they say, "Oh, you're such a nice young man," and I sit down and I share my story with them, they start to forget they're talking to a former street kid. You know what? I've realized in my life, a broken life is a broken life. A broken marriage is a broken marriage. A broken relationship is a broken relationship. But there is hope. I hope that through this story, that when circumstances do not change in your life, I hope that through my story tonight, when circumstances seem not to change in your life, you'll be inspired to always work hard. You'll be inspired to forge ahead. You'll be inspired to work hard. I hope that through this story, even when everything in your life does not make sense, I hope that you'll be able to have hope and not ever give up. I hope that you'll be able to use the opportunities and the people that God will place in your life to be the kind of person that He intends you to be. You are not on earth by mistake. Each one of us here is here on earth for a reason. And until you know what that reason is, you will not have accomplished the mission that our Heavenly Father sent you to do. One of my favorite quotes is, there are two important days in your life: the day you were born and the day you knew why. I have a strong testimony that I know who I am now. Through the people that have made my life easier, Mother Kathy, Mother BJ, and Kristen, and Kobo, and all the wonderful people that have made on the team, I've come to have a strong testimony of the Savior. I know that our Heavenly Father lives, and I know that He knows each one of us. And I know that if we allow Him to take full control of our lives, if we become patient and do our part, He will do the rest. All we need is to do our best, and He will do the rest. I say all these things in the sacred name of our Savior Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.